Здравствуйте, Анатолий Эдуардович, в студии. От наших инвесторов
Now
в
we
течение
welcome
всего дня
Mr.
приходило очень
Yunitskiy
много
in
вопросов.
the
Конечно,
studio.
ваше
We have
выступление,
questions,
как
lots of
обычно, вызывает
questions.
большой отклик.
As usual, there is a very
И
lively
особенно
response,
после прогулки по экотехнопарку и рассказу о разных
especially
улучшениях,
after a
модернизации,
digital excursion around the Eco
вещах, которые
Park,
вы рассказывали о
Techno Park.
транспортно-инфраструктурных комплексах.
When they see the
Безусловно,
transport, the complexes and the
количество вопросов
infrastructure,
мы их
people ask a lot of
сгруппировали.
questions
И те, которые
that
были
we
наиболее
have
популярны
received
в
a
своем
certain
виде,
number
used to
of
put
questions
together
from
будут
investors.
наиболее интересные.
based on the most popular and the most
We have
interesting
selected the
questions that
most
we have received.
interesting and useful questions, which will be
So on behalf
interesting
of
for
the
the
investors, I will ask those questions.
Когда будет
audience.
переход на следующий этап?
So the first question is, when will the transition be to the
The
next
first
stage?
question is, when are we going to the next stage?
He says, I'm not dealing with the investment attraction.
I put
I'm
together
dealing
a
with
program,
the technical part, with the testing.
published it.
I published my report.
So
The
moving
next
forward on
stage will
investing,
be the investment stage.
this is our investment fund that is doing it.
This responsibility falls onto our investment
I'm
fund.
not the director or founder of the fund.
In the SkyWay system, which I created, I'm just a shareholder. I'm also a
In my
shareholder,
system,
and I created this
the
system.
SkyWay that I have created, I'm only a shareholder,
So
even though I'm
that's why I am
the big
rather
shareholder,
a
large shareholder,
performer
I'm still a
and
shareholder.
not the person who forms the stages. And the
So
stages
we
will be
perform
performed
according to the financing we get.
Now, as I said, we have about 1,000 engineers.
Because
we
can have like
arranged
1,000
the
engineers,
office
we can
where
have a
they will
place
be
for them to
working,
work.
programs, computers
But
they
the
will be
product is
using.
what matters. We cannot work without the
So
necessary
obviously we need certain
equipment.
equipment to produce elements.
And we also require
So I'm responsible
testing
for the testing
roads
of
where we can test
tracks, to see the results, to
technology, we can get it
introduce changes,
certified,
and then enter
and
the
then
market.
be on the market with it.
We had several force majeure circumstances.
And we remember what happened in Lithuania, those events.
So obviously plan is the one thing, but as to the practical implementation, like you know, in the Soviet Union, they wanted to build communism, and
we don't want to be like the communism that was the construction of communism in the USSR that was never finished.
But the plan was.
Even though there was money, there was everything that was required. So I do everything that depends on me to actually bring all the plans to fruition.
The main criteria in our project is obviously with the minimum.
The main criteria is to do more, to do it cost efficiently in less time.
I use
so
money as
my
an instrument.
use of money is instrumental.
And now it all depends on the investors. So depending on the funds that we will
build our
to
transport
attract,
and
that will
go on the market
when
with
the transition to the next stage will be.
I'm so thankful, of course, to those who have invested so far.
And obviously, our gratitude, the reward to the investment will be investors, will be the dividends they will receive. And this is definitely our goal. This is that we are striving to achieve.
I am, as a large shareholder, I'm investing into the development of SkyWay,
so as
and
a performer,
over these years.
So again, I would like to underline that as a performer,
we
created this model. We need funds. We need.
We have been working on the most expensive part.
So at the final
We need
stage,
to
we need to attract the
raise
money, which we need about $200 million.
about 150 or
Because
200
depending
million
how the
dollars,
plan will
million
go, whether
dollars.
we're gonna complete the whole infrastructure or some portion of it.
We need to build our roads. So it all depends on what we intend to build, our financial requirements.
So when we
have the necessary financing, when we'll have built
we will build the high-speed track.
Now we have an alternative to build in Belarus.
So we
can
have,
also build in the United Arab Emirates.
Two options to build one track in Belarus, and also we are building a track, a high-speed track in the United Arab Emirates.
Also a test road, have certification, and then
these are our two first projects in Belarus and United Arab Emirates, and from there we will have more targeted
high-speed transport.
Our experience of work in Emirates showed that the construction
in the United Arab Emirates, it's more complicated to build.
What we are doing here will cost there
2 or 3 times more expensive.
So depending on where we do it, in Arab Emirates,
the climate
is more harsh. So the cost will be 2-3 times higher in United Arab Emirates.
Economically, it's more efficient, cost efficient to build in Belarus.
And
because now we have this pandemic situation.
The money now is the key issue, and accounting for
the event that has affected the entire world and is affecting it.
This funding becomes even harder. Accounting for the budget of our investors.
Budgets, we have to consider.
So unfortunately, our investment now is not getting higher.
But we do have to implement these stages.
So that's why now we're working with large investors in order to transition to the next stage. And we involve
all over the world,
organizations, different countries.
I'm
sure that was quite a detailed answer.
Also answers many questions, similar questions that have been asked. And the next question will be about transport certification. SkyWay transport certified in United Arab Emirates.
Сертификация – это по-другому называется соответствие требованиям. То есть есть требования к транспорту, мы должны соответствовать. Вот и все. Требования к транспорту мы знаем. И знаем требования к транспорту в любой стране. И поэтому у нас нет проблем сделать транспорт таким, струнный транспорт, SkyWay, чтобы он соответствовал этим требованиям, естественно, был сертифицирован. И поэтому работа, бумажная работа с документами и так далее, да, с испытаниями, с исследованиями, с протоколами, она ведется, она началась еще 2 года назад, а не сегодня, так, естественно. И она уже близка к завершению, потому что все, что нужно было, там надо было даже свои нормативы создать. Вот такие талмуды писать, вот такой толщины. Это все расписывать. Возьмите там, я не знаю, на какую-нибудь кофемолку или там на СВЧ-печь или на телевизор инструкцию. Она вот такая. Так у нас же тоже должны быть эти документы. На подвижной состав, на конкретную модель. Причем это сложнее самолета. Тоже юнибус, да, особенно высокоскоростной.
So certification, what is certification? Certification is the compliance with norms, and what we are talking is complex, as complex as an airplane, or more complex. So we are considering also the conditions, like in the United Arab Emirates, for example, is the climate very different from ours. The air that has a high concentration of salts, or water has high concentration of salts. So these conditions we have to comply with our technology.
соответствующим образом, то мы привлекаем и те организации, которые занимаются сертификацией.
So to make sure that we comply, we bring in those organizations that work with certification. For example, also the metro built in Dubai is certified by European norms. So there's a lot of work. We will build a test road. We will build the vehicles that will be used there. We will conduct the commissioning works. We have our design documentation that envisions it all. It is also stipulated there.
Понятно. То есть выводом можно сделать такое новое понятие. Правильнее спрашивать не о сертификации, а о соответствии нормам безопасности.
So then we can conclude that it's important first, before we talk about certification, we need to talk about compliance. Everyone understands, for example, that people who are using wheelchairs have also to use the transport. And for example, if the vehicles are not built to carry wheelchairs because of their measurements not fitting, that's also a miscompliance. So if we have like So it's not any fantastic, formidable term that we are talking about or requirements. It has to, for example, if we are talking about lighting, again, how many lamps do we need, for example, or what are the safety requirements? What makes it safe? So it doesn't go on fire and things like that. So we need materials that don't burn. And something that doesn't burn, not just because somebody strikes a match, but something that doesn't burn even if there's high, there's an open fire somewhere. So it's not some super requirements. So it won't be like, oh, like, what about this and that requirement? So everything is relevant.
Хорошо, еще один вопрос касательно работы в Объединенных Арабских Эмиратах.
Another question about the United Arab Emirates. Will you have your own production, own manufacturing site? We should see at we should look at what is more cost efficient. For example, if we build our vehicles in the United Arab Emirates, it will be more expensive than what we can produce in Belarus. If we build it over there and we try to sell it more expensively, nobody will buy. So some things can be cheaper, and we have machine building facilities in Belarus. So in the United Arab Emirates, where we will find those who will build those machines? If we bring them in and give them wages, we give them accommodation, social guarantees, it will be more expensive. So we try to be very reasonable in everything we do.
Понятно. Коронавирус, конечно, повлиял очень сильно на нашу жизнь, на жизнь всех людей на планете.
So the coronavirus has affected the life of people on the planet drastically.
Ограничений, которые были введены для того, чтобы ограничить распространение этого вируса.
And to limit
влияние, в том числе на экономику и на то, как работает.
To limit the spread of to stop the spread of the virus that has also affected the economy.
Ну, безусловно, повлияло. Оно повлияло на весь
So how have you been affected by this situation? Of course, we have been affected.
мобильность. Невозможно было выехать из страны.
Travel is limited now. We are not as mobile.
Карантин или въедешь. То есть надо командировку поехать на день и сидеть 2 недели в карантине, к примеру. Это выключить из процесса, это тратить деньги еще дополнительно, да?
So, of course, the quarantine measures, many processes, everything has, the quarantine measures have affected many processes.
Других стран, потому что в ряде стран остановились целое производство, целые отрасли. Как мы можем, допустим,
and entire productions and companies, and for example, things that have been built, they have not been paid for and not delivered. So a lot of things have been affected. Also, business trips, deliveries from abroad. But we had to find ways how to work with that. And how to work in the conditions of the quarantine. Project works, construction works, engineering.
Новые линии строим, там же много тоже деталей, узлов, элементов, оборудования, которые мы сами изготавливаем. Мы на карантин не уходили. Да? И если тем более это оборудование можно сделать из тех материалов, которые уже закуплены, либо которые есть в Беларуси, то мы это все делаем. Поэтому там в этом плане коронавирус пандемии не помешала. Так?
The coronavirus was not an obstacle for us. We did not stop working during this pandemic. Of course, total productivity reduced. How to say? Our personnel was reduced somewhat because we tried to optimize processes.
To lay off some people, we had to take measures there.
Therefore, for some period of time, we have reduced.
And for some time, we had to lower the wages
situation in order to optimize the process and not to go bankrupt.
But of course,
and some of the employees left themselves. They quit, basically.
Basically, we managed to.
But as a result, now we have a renewed
and
company,
we are
which is
healthier, we are more professional,
more
we are
healthy.
stronger now.
And with this team of people, specialists,
Because
we are
only the
able to do
strong
more,
get through things like
to
that.
perform more effectively. And now our backbone is about 500 engineers. And in general, everything is fine.
Quite fine.
Продолжение этой темы. Какая стратегия дальнейшего развития компании в связи с ограничениями, которые все еще присутствуют? Какие вы видите возможные варианты развития?
So, in continuation of this topic, what is the strategy for the further development of the company and actions in connection with the restrictions? Since I'm an engineer, a transport engineer, I understand how to ensure efficiency. I understand that capacity and efficiency of the system, they are connected. For example, if we only have one passenger, and if this one passenger will be transported every second, now we can transport about almost 100,000 passengers in 24 hours. So there is no railway in the world that can transport 100,000 passengers in one day. Well, it was a figurative speech saying that compartment for one passenger. It will be, of course, more than one passengers.
Типа так дешевле, эффективно? Да нет, это не эффективно на самом деле. И в нашем транспорте это четко видно.
We can clearly see it in our transport. We use optimal capacity.
Ну, как бы машины семейного типа. Кстати, не все знают.
Say like family type cars.
Там было два фактора главных.
When automobile transport won over the railway transport.
Потому что он небольшой. Если поезд будет подъезжать там километровый каждой двери.
For example, obviously it's not convenient for the train to arrive to the building, to come close to some kind of house. But automobile transport was suitable for doing that. That was one reason why automobiles won over trains.
Чтобы трассы прошли от двери до двери, так это должны быть легкие, они дешевые, да.
So in order for us, for the tracks to come from the door to the door, it has to be very effective solutions.
На семье, потому что нет дорог, да? Так не было дорог в 18 веке, поэтому, наверное, и машин не было.
So like talking about roads in the 19th century, there were no cars because there were no roads suitable.
Да, поэтому
like before they were riding horses. So the most important, say, when we talk about cars, automobile transport, important is not so much the cars, but the roads where it drives. So the first we need to build roads, and then the cars come. Using the same logic, the pandemic also showed. So the buses continue to drive as they drove, automobiles continue to drive as they did. And therefore, the choice was made. And the correctness of choice was confirmed by the pandemic of coronavirus.
Хорошо. Я думаю, что это отвечает на те запросы, которые мы обобщили таким вопросом.
I think this answers the questions.
Есть еще один интересный вопрос, он касается
There is one interesting question.
Дерева, окруженные зеленью. Вопрос такой: можно ли будет ваши уникальные дома строить по франшизе? Как это получить? Есть ли в этом отношении разработки?
Can we build your unique homes using the franchise and create business connections? It's still early to talk about this.
До того, когда он идеален. То есть нельзя с полуготовым продуктом выходить на рынок. И ECODOMA это...
So right now it's too early for us to answer that because the product is not quite ready. It's semi-ready.
Главное-то здесь не это. Конструктивно все понятно. Ну, деревянный дом, и он деревянный дом.
Talking about wooden house, the structure is
so
clear.
We're talking about those unique wooden houses. Can they be built on franchise?
Where there are plants, also even animals.
Почва плодородная.
Where there is a fertile soil, and it's not what we buy in the store.
Of course, we're talking about where places where we have
so I'm talking
fertile
about the fertile
land.
soil. It has to be soil rich in special microorganisms that can create life.
The lands,
so that means that
soil
all the minerals have to be present in that soil.
They contain the elements that we also contain in our DNA, in our cells.
And then it has to be transferred to the plants. Also, the logic is, for
Our
example,
houses
the house
that will be built later, our ecological houses,
can feed the house.
they must be
The family will
autonomous.
be autonomous. No, I'm talking about the house that can feed the family. No matter what is the force majeure, coronavirus doesn't matter. A meteorite fell.
So this house should be autonomous even if there is coronavirus outside or a war,
energy,
and these houses will be
solar
able
energy,
to provide us with everything.
First of all, it's plants, fertile soil.
And inside them will be plants, the living soil that contains all the elements,
So that the plants can,
and a variety of foods, because we cannot stick to one single food. And for example, when we consume plants, some of them contain some elements, other plants or edible plants could contain other elements. So talking about different elements, for example, elements that we need for our eyes, and for example, carrots don't contain that particular element. So
нет, она не видела, не заметила, подобралась незаметно. Но понятно, что там есть селен. Так зачем я должен глаза выкавировать и не есть? Я лучше его съем. Да? Вот в этой логике мы делаем экодома, в том числе для того,
so basically, we build the houses. Those are
составляющую, да, экосистему правильно сформировав, да, причем таком.
So we can form the right kind of ecosystem, and
мы могли потом это все
like a subtropical
космических домах в открытом космосе, в том числе для того, чтобы там могли работать люди в
climate houses. These houses that can be built in space, where people can work.
Человечество. Вот это вот я с этого начал эту работу, да.
I actually started. Well, the product itself is very raw, let's say.
За деньги, кстати. Не надо тут халявы. Мы халяву не любим. Что-то делать за деньги.
So,
и были спроектированы 6 типов.
I ordered the project. I paid for it, and I got 6 projects of such houses. So, trying to live in one of those houses, and you can see that inside we are growing bananas and persimmons and
обычно попадает в канализацию, а потом попадает на поля фильтрации, оттуда в реки, из рек
also the
и все везде дохнет, все умирает от этой грязи, да? Все это попадает
filters
в корневую систему растений.
That instead of all the what is filtered out of our houses and polluting the environment, it goes back to the roots of the plants inside those houses. So there is no waste. Everything is processed. So everything inside this house is growing, sustained and fed by what usually would be waste, go to waste.
И некоторые говорят, да как же, там же стеклянный порошок, он же яд и так далее. Я говорю, а вы знаете, что нам даже мышьяк нужен? Нужен даже мышьяк, он тоже в ДНК, он в структуре клеток. Ну, правда, надо...
If you come to think of it, our DNA contains everything, even things that we consider, elements that we consider poisonous, and elements like silver, elements like... And we need all those elements to sustain ourselves. We need to get all those minerals. for our system.
Калории важны. Но наш
And calories are also
организм
important.
умирает и будет с организмом. Надо построить новые клетки. Как ты построишь это такой сложный орган, как клетка, где даже молекулы ДНК,
Our
не
cells
материала. Как ты
are a
можешь
very
контролировать
complex
самолет, если у тебя нет
organ.
заклепок?
And
Сейчас
if we don't have the
построить
construction materials, if our cells don't have construction materials,
И поэтому
they will
сама
not be able to
форма
reproduce
домашняя,
themselves and
это живая
repair
составляющая.
themselves.
И поскольку она еще до конца не отработана,
So here is the same thing. This house is like a cell.
Понятно, благодарю. Я думаю, что
I see, thank you.
все энтузиасты экологической и
I believe that all
жизни,
ecological and
зелёной,
sustainable development,
ждут с нетерпением
green
нового
enthusiasts,
этого продукта.
all enthusiasts of these movements are
Я лично заинтересован в том, чтобы иметь возможность приобрести такой продукт, чтобы моя семья
very interested in developing such a project. And actually, product, I'm also interested in this personally
которая здоровая и правильная. Но,
because it's healthy and because it's the right thing to do. You mentioned another question that we were about to ask.
Инвесторов задают в той или иной форме.
Many of our investors ask this question.
Работая над экодомом, вы готовитесь и моделируете определенные технологические решения, комплексные для космической программы. А проект SkyWay должен перейти в проект SPACEWay.
So the project SkyWay, will it become SPACEWay, as we talked about SPACEWay? These projects are not interconnected and one doesn't ever transform into the other. The space program has its own system.
Это единственное решение с точки зрения физики, которое может за счет внутренних сил системы, да, не опираясь ни на что и не выбрасывая наружу ничего.
And in
порядка 10 миллионов тонн грузов и порядка 10 миллионов.
For example,
эта система струнная, то есть я сначала ее придумал.
The strong system that I came up with, that was the system that I first came up with, my first system.
И когда я пытался запатентовать еще в советское время, то это...
And it was in the Soviet times, and I tried to get a patent.
Преследование и так далее, даже как бы СССР преследовал в свое время, там даже суды были какие-то дурацкие, не знаю. Ну, это отдельная история, да?
But that is a story of its own.
Вопрос, в том числе из госкомизобретений, что эту космическую программу нельзя реализовать, что чушь и бред. Не хватит там энергии, не хватит там материалов, не хватит там бетона.
And people are saying that there's a lot of limiting beliefs in this case that we won't be able to implement this space program in terms of, well, we will lack energy, we will lack resources, we will lack this and that.
Такие как сопромат, там физику, математику и другие. И я уже тогда закончил вуз, стал инженером путей сообщения.
I was a young engineer at the time,
чтобы его удешевить, упростить, уменьшить расход материалов.
and I was working at perfecting my my construction, that I made it simpler, I made it more cost efficient.
Это вот несущая будет часть эстакады. Потом подумал, слушай, так я же могу на нее...
And that was the rail, actually the rail of the construction.
Уже нашел второе решение уже для наземного транспорта, причем оно является оптимальным, оно лучше любого другого вида транспорта.
I found a second solution.
И тогда, когда развалился Советский Союз, я понял, что вот это...
That was the best, and when the Soviet Union fell apart,
в космос никому не нужно.
and what we had this idea that humanity wants to go to space, but no one was interested at the time. Everybody went into business to survive, and of course I was also in business. Because we had to survive, we had to earn our living. But this space, I realized that I needed to create a business that would help me with solving the issues that I needed to implement my main projects.
Это я стал развивать уже как бизнес
I
направление.
started developing
Транспорт Юнитского, потом я назвал это SkyWay.
the businesses, the business branches and
Небесный путь.
trends, and
И уже опять
the SkyWay,
это было сложно
the Sky
запустить,
Road,
потому что куда только не ходил,
and also the financing is.
там стран, и к министрам, и в ООН, и крупным инвесторам, и кроме проблем ничего не было, кроме проблем. Какие-то отъемы, откаты назад, какие-то там дела стали заводиться, еще что-то. Теми, к кому я обращался за поддержкой и помощью. Я понял, что это тупиковое направление. И когда у меня в 7-й раз все отняли до нуля, 7-й раз, вот за всю эту историю, я понял, что так нельзя дальше работать. И я вот придумал эту систему.
When they took away from me everything for the 7th time, I invented this system. I'm just an ordinary person, an ordinary man. I grew up in a village. I worked all my life in the factory. I'm not of some kind of like royal blood. I was also using regular transport as everybody else. And I addressed for help to the same people as me. All of us need this. We regular people need it. It's not needed by ministers, ministers. They have their own planes, their own submarines, etc. We, regular people, need this. Regular users, simple people. That's when I wrote my appeal to people. I said that this is the biggest business that existed in civilization, and let's do it together. Whoever, I appeal to regular people, please contribute something, whatever you can. Who can put $10, who can put $1 million. This is where the responsibility, accountability starts. Therefore, these are two directions. They are connected with each other. So that like one person invented it, technology, but these two trends, they solve two totally different tasks. First is on-ground transport, and the second task is going into space transport, open space. So say about the ground transport, it moves horizontally. It's like if you think about gravitation pit, it's deep, it's endless. So you can go along around the orbit. You need, but this would be the most complicated solution, the huge amount of money to solve this kind of movement, to bring it into the space. In order to implement this kind of technology, the technology of the space. So basically the string transport, SkyWay technology, we are meant to solve the problems of ground transportation on Earth, where people, all ordinary people, have to just somehow move from work to work, have the safe mode of transportation. That's why SkyWay, we're not talking about going into the outer space. This is not the task that SkyWay wants to resolve. But in order for SPACEWAY to develop and not interfere with the development of SkyWay, me as a founder, I created an independent company, which is called Engineering Technologies, where we develop a space program. And me, I'm there as an individual, as a private person. I have my own personnel. We work on the SPACEWAY project. But our credo is to do maximum with the minimum cost.
Это доклады, сборник докладов на
Here is the report
конференции. Очень
from the
серьезные,
conference.
серьезные доклады. Это очень
A
серьезно.
very important, very serious report about the work of this company on the SPACEWay project.
Ну, эта работа была уже продемонстрирована, результат этой работы, да?
And the results of this work have been already demonstrated. Now, in order to finance,
Народное финансирование не поднянет однозначно.
of course, talking about financing of a SPACEWay project, the people's financing will not be enough because this is some kind of huge amount of money that is needed, different level of financing.
Подключились крупные инвестиционные фонды, которые занимаются.
We need big investment funds who are oriented into the future.
Независимо
Therefore, we work independent.
тем, что один автор, да? И то, и то.
So what I'm trying to underline that these two projects, SkyWay and SPACEWay, are two independent projects. The only common thing between them is the common author, me.
Потому что многие наши сотрудники в автономной технологии, инженеры, конструкторы и так далее, тоже увлечены вот этой космической программой, но они делают это не в ущерб работе, они делают это в выходные дни, там, по вечерам и так далее. Я им выделяю гранты, чтобы они дополнительно...
Also certain organizations that are interested in doing this kind of space work, but they do it as a part-time work. In addition to their regular job, they do it during weekend. Work on this project. I just allocate some funds to them. I give them awards. They help us to work correctly on this program.
Которые мы сейчас создаем, а потом строим, показываем, сертифицируем, а потом выйдем на рынок, кстати.
Хорошо, благодарю. Ну,
Okay, thank you.
для меня, если обобщить, это не то, что они независимы друг от друга, но и не одно и то же. Это параллельно.
So the answer is that
Отлично.
so that these are two separate projects. They are independent of each other. Next question.
Обобщенный нами из многих вопросов очень похожи друг на друга. Возможно ли, чтобы представители крупных акционеров, а также заинтересованных
Is it possible that representatives of major shareholders, as well as interested potential large investors, government agencies who were present at the opening of projects being implemented in
Это не обязательно, то есть
Sharhash?
крупный инвестор, чем отличается там маленький инвестор? Он вложил деньги, получил долю в бизнесе, причем получил преференции.
What is the difference between large investors and small investors? Of course, it's a different amount of money invested and a different amount of profit, obviously.
Я же крупный инвестор. Да? Поэтому крупный инвестор, вложив деньги, он сделал свою работу. Так. И просто привлекать его в качестве какого? Инженера, менеджера, чего? Разработчика, дизайнера или кого?
Ну, насколько я понимаю, вопрос в том, крупных инвесторов будут ли приглашать в качестве гостей?
В качестве гостей можно, но здесь же вопрос не так.
The question is, are you going to invite large investors as guests?
Поэтому, естественно,
But the answer is no. They have to be participants.
Вопросов нет, мы, естественно, будем.
Of course, we're going to invite them as guests to come, and when we demonstrate, to come and look.
Посещал его высочество шейх Шажи. Это было закрыто.
Like we were visited by His Majesty Sheikh Sharji.
Ну, понятно, каждого вдоль и поперек с помощью приборов, там собаки были, что не дай бог, что там не случилось. И прочее, естественно.
So there were a lot of instruments there, and the dogs were there. So it was a big event, big show.
И открытые мероприятия не будут, то, естественно.
So there are open. Of course, there will be open events, and of course, we are going to invite large investors to come and look. We're not going to hide anything, and I am always accessible. But of course, to a certain degree. Of course, well, when we talk about know-how or some certain photographs, maybe this we will not allow.
Еще один вопрос.
One more question.
Инвесторов. Запланирована ли у вас встреча в формате круглого стола с крупными инвесторами? Ну, как пояснение такое. Это те, которые инвестировали более $100 000. Имеются ли у вас для них какие-то спецпредложения, например, вовлеченность?
So, is a large investor, is a big investors round table planned
Здесь конкретно
for
эти крупные инвесторы хотят
only the investors, the big investors who who are planning a closer collaboration with you. Well, we don't have any secret information. And I am the biggest investor. I have nothing to hide from myself. So are at a round table, so and we are here at this round table, we are talking, and we talk every day. So we are working. This illusion that, oh, I invested $100,000 and I must be treated differently. I must be given benefits. We don't do this. Because the candy is already there. It's just that if you invest $10, you buy 1 to 10. If you buy 100, if you invest $100,000, you buy 1 to 100. So.
Думать, что если человек вложит $100 000, то он, конечно, нам поможет спроектировать Unibus.
Это не обязательно взаимосвязано.
Да, это более того, это скорее всего.
So if a person invests $100,000,
вложит, так лучше его не подпускать вообще там проектирование. Такое там.
Doesn't mean that he is able to design.
Допустим, вкладывая там, я не знаю, в Airbus или там компанию Boeing, то это не значит, что эти инвесторы в компании, которая проектирует самолет, вот прямо вот каждый день заходят и там смотрят.
So the investors, if they invest large amounts of money, it doesn't mean that they come. For example, if it's an aircraft construction, manufacturing, it doesn't mean that they come and supervise the construction or the manufacturing.